Welcome to Oh Brother, a podcast of three brothers trying to figure it all out, with your hosts, Brandon, Collin, and Aaron. On this week's show, Ukraine Week.
You did break it again.
Did you hear anything?
Yes.
What did you hear?
It sounded like lo-fi hip-hop beats.
Sweet. Why did I not hear you?
It's a good question.
Okay. I am going to get this figured out.
Someday. Oh, goodbye. I'm just waiting. I didn't expect you to be here. I was joining a little bit early. I was like, oh, there's a person here. So, all right.
Indeed. Well, I am playing with some new software to get my computer audio into Zoom, so that if we play a song or a short video to listen to or something like that, it would be naturally in the recording.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Fancy boy.
Unfortunately, I could not hear you at all, so that's a bit disconcerting.
Yes.
So I need to figure out the next step.
All right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, let me X out of all my windows here. Google Docs has been very flaky for me the past several days.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's not good. I was having to take notes while I was interviewing people, and it just kept locking up, and I couldn't do anything with it. And so I just had to refresh the page just every 5 minutes.
Ew. Gross.
Yeah, it was not fun, especially since I was on coffee shop Wi-Fi. That may have been the problem, now that I think about it.
I mean, yeah.
Probably was the issue. Finding a lot of things on my desk. A lot of notes for my children. Hold on, I'm cleaning up.
Yeah.
Also, I have resorted to floor piles for accommodating paperwork.
Wow, we've moved fast.
Well, my desk is very small. It fits my laptop and a second monitor, and that's as wide as it is. So I don't have places to put
Fair enough.
tax documents or things I have to mail, and then they have to go on the floor, which is fun.
Have you heard of drawers?
My desk also does not have drawers.
Well, yeah, but you can buy drawers separately.
Well, but
I have this thing at school that's next to my desk that's like a plastic toady thing that's 3 feet tall, and it has some mini drawers in it. And I just use it that way.
Yeah. But these are things that I have to remember to mail because they're important. And if I put them in a drawer, I will miss my deadline.
Yeah, but other things can go in the drawer. That's what I'm saying.
Oh.
I
need to take a picture of my desk and send it to you so you can just see not a lot here. Sorry.
It's all right.
My goodness. My allergies really, really trying to knock me off my feet this year. It's my goodness. I have not had tonsillitis in many a moon.
First day of spring, 35 degrees. It'll do it to you.
Yes. So bad.
Yes.
So I will be muting myself quite a bit.
Fair enough.
But at least I can talk. Yeah, yesterday and the day before, it was just straight up painful. I mean, it still is. It's one of those things where the back of my throat is so swollen that it hurts to move my tongue left and right. I don't know if you've ever had that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Which is fun. So, here we are, indeed.
All right. And Aaron is here just in time to hear you talk about your sore throat. Hooray.
Yes. Oh, hi, Aaron.
I couldn't find my headphones. Sorry.
What?
I couldn't find my headphones. I didn't know which ones to use last time, and the wireless ones I had weren't charged last time. So I was quickly scrambling to charge these ones. So
fair enough.
Made my entrance on time.
Stealth mode. I like it.
Easy peasy.
So yes, this week I believe you mean Привіт, добрий вечір, мої брати. Hello, how are you doing?
Man, that's nice. Ukraine. Welcome to. We've had Shark Week, and now we are happy to have Ukraine Week.
Absolutely,
on the podcast. So, I've not been doing much translating due to voice issues, but
fair enough.
It is what it is.
That's all right.
So, how is it learning? You're learning Ukrainian. How has that been going?
Well, I mean, varying degrees of success, clearly. It's been all right. I've been sort of messing around on Duolingo for the vocabulary practice, right? But what I've learned is that Ukrainian is a language that is sneakily complex grammatically. So we don't have to. So if like, you mess around with like your normal sentences like hello and how are you and all that stuff. But like if you are doing like actual sentences where you're trying to like express ideas, the grammar is kind of intense, right? So we don't have to just deal with verb conjugation problems, which like I remember from my French days, my lovely verb tables that I had to make, right? In class all the time.
Fun.
So like when you really dive hard into it, Ukrainian language also deals a lot with the vocative cases of like the nouns. So the nouns change endings and stuff too based on certain things and reasons that I'm not entirely sure about because like I haven't gone super hardcore in it, right? But the grammar is like super complicated. Maybe not super complicated, maybe like medium complicated. Because it's not like Japanese, right? Where it's just like, well, you're just in trouble. There's infinite characters and weird things, but like that part is weird. So you need other grammar like based resources to kind of just try to figure out what's happening here. Why does this sentence say my in this spelling and this sentence says it in a different spelling? Why?
Oh no.
So these are things that I've been messing around with. So luckily there are a couple things on the internet to help you with this, right? First and foremost, the super convenient website, speakukrainian.com. There you go. Or speakua.com to help you with all of these grammatical based needs. It's this lady. Her name is, I'm going to get this wrong. I'm sorry. Ina Spronchuk or Spronchuk. Ina Spronchuk, maybe that could be her name. She does like online language learning classes, but also handily has a YouTube channel with just like tons of random videos about Ukrainian pronunciation guides and stuff like that on there. So that's actually really handy because you can like, even without like enrolling in her course or whatever, you can just like listen to her sort of speak and kind of get your head around the language a little bit, because that's the other hard part when a language like this that is that I think we'll talk about here in a minute, but the exposure to the Ukrainian language just in general is very, very low. Right? Like it's hard to find places to listen to Ukrainian speaking, right? Or like you don't know where to start, right? So if you're ever trying to learn a language, one important aspect of it is to listen to the language because you need to know how the words sound, right? Because if you just look at it, you're going,
yeah, that's why they say if you're learning a language, like immersion is really the best way. Because you hear it constantly, you're seeing it around you constantly through reading, and you're interacting with it a lot more, like on a higher hit rate per moment.
Yeah. So her YouTube channel is really good about that. And she has like broken down things about like, oh, hey, here's like personal pronoun video where you learn about how to say like he, she, them, right? I. You like, oh, here's some letters, or like here's some how to pronounce the alphabet, which is very handy because, as I'll get to in a moment, I did a bit of a deep dive into the history of the Ukrainian language. More on that in a second. And so she's got that stuff. So you can like get these little bite-sized pieces of like, oh, I need help with this. Bam, there's a YouTube video that you can just watch, right? She also has a couple things on her website that are like free. So I check those out too, obviously. One of them is like a 3-day, like, here's some like bare bones minimum Ukrainian stuff. Like if you were going to Ukraine on a business trip in a week, this would be what you need in your life, right? Like it's like videos breaking down like really kind of essential phrases, like introductions, like how to say that kind of thing, like really basic conversation stuff. And it's free. You just sign up for it, and she sends you like a link to like it's just a YouTube video, but it's like a what's a privatized one, like a hidden one or whatever. What's it called?
Yes.
Yeah, my brain just turned off.
Yeah.
But like it's not like a public video. So it's just the link to a private video. That's
unlisted.
Unlisted. Thank you. So you can kind of get those lessons there, plus like PDF files that go along with it.
Oh, nice.
So you can kind of look at the written language with the alphabet and everything. So that's really cool. She goes through the stuff, and then you just have the video. So like, I could see how some people would be like, man, you did that video kind of fast, but like it's a video. Just rewind it.
Replay. Yeah.
Boom.
Oh no.
Shut up.
Drag the slider back.
So that's cool. And the other thing that she found, I just found this yesterday, that's on her little website thing, that's like actually super dope, is it's a free PDF file. So you just like put it in the cart and order it. And then that's basically, and then you just download it. But it's $0. So it's 100% free. But it's a PDF file with like 1 billion web links in it to like Ukrainian stuff.
Oh, nice.
So like when I was talking about like Immersion, it's like lists of like Ukrainian news websites. So you can just like look at it. One of them's like Ukrainian radio stations that are on the internet. Wow. You know, then there's like this whole big thing of like places where you can look at books and authors in Ukrainian, and like TV shows and movie titles and music artists, and it's just like a big list of stuff.
Wow.
That is in Ukrainian that you probably can't find by yourself because you're trying to search for things that are written in a different alphabet with the Latin alphabet, right? And you're like, I don't know how to type this. Which maybe you had some of these troubles too if you guys did any research this week, because I did. We can talk about that in a minute too, but
yeah,
that is it's really cool. It's like a starting guide for like, oh hey, here's like some of the ones with like the news websites. You can just like read some news after you kind of get a handle on the alphabet. You can just sort of like try to pronounce the words yourself, like in their natural environment.
Oh, cool.
Right? Like here they are doing their thing. And you can just hear Ukrainian.
Yeah.
Which is really handy. Again, if you're trying to learn it, or at least be comfortable, like maybe not like learn it like super grammatically and like correctly and become like a really fluent speaker. But even if you're just trying to learn like some phrases and stuff, like hearing people pronounce these letters, it's handy, right? Because some of them are very mysterious. There's a couple that I'm still like, what? I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, you will need to because I was not going to attempt to Google search for her name while you were talking. So you need to put that in the Google Doc before.
Yeah. Well, her website is just speakua.com.
Oh, okay.
And then she has her YouTube channel is called like Speak Ukrainian. I'll probably send you that one later.
Okay.
Yeah, she's pretty awesome. She does a language school. She does, if you're interested in doing it, she will do like online, like Skype lessons, right, and stuff like that.
Oh,
maybe not right this second because she's in Ukraine currently. She might be a little busy. So, thoughts go out to you, Ina. You're amazing. Thank you. So she also has like written a textbook for like if you are. It's one that's like it's not like an introductory textbook, right? It's like if you are like going in hardcore, like you get that one. But she has like flashcards and stuff you can get or whatever, and so it's like a whole deal. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love those kind of resources because, like you said, trying to surface information or what things are is really we tend to think it's easy when we're trying to find stuff, like you said, with our own alphabet. But as soon as we try and step outside of that, all of a sudden the window into the rest of the world is really small.
Yeah,
through our internet.
It's hard to know how to find it, right? Like, because you are trying to look for these, like there are characters in the Cyrillic alphabet that do not exist in the Latin alphabet, right? So trying to figure out things is real difficult. So that one, the PDF resource, when I saw that yesterday, I was like, yo, this is actually kind of genius because, you know, you can just, like, there's no way I would have been able to find, like, Ukrainian news websites by myself. Right? Like, I mean, I could have, but it would have been, like, much gnashing of teeth, right? Like,
well, and then my question whenever I try and do those kind of things is, am I actually seeing what I'm supposed to be seeing? Because I don't know, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if this is actually, because if you're just learning it, you know, this is no offense to, but if you're just learning one of the Slavic languages, it's hard to figure out and understand which one am I listening to.
Oh no, yeah. Which one am I looking at?
Yeah,
exactly. Because they use a similar alphabet. I was looking earlier, not today, but last week, but like that and like the Russian alphabet, they're similar, but the Russian alphabet has extra letters that you wouldn't notice if you were just like trying to start learning Ukrainian, right? You would have a hard time knowing which one you're looking at or any of the other Slavic languages, right? Like, which one's this? Is this Belarusian? I don't know. Like, what is that?
Right. Yeah. And you need to, you do need to have someone to hold your hand. And then on top of that, there are things like, you know, just from a news perspective I love seeing what other countries and other people around the world are seeing and hearing about our world.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with that. I do that a lot
because I want to know what are they saying? What are they hearing? What are they saying? Especially right now during this invasion. Like, okay, well, I know what and this isn't the media are lying, blah, 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 blah.
No.
Just how are they covering it? Right. Cause we have our own problems so we can't dedicate the entire news hour to the war. So we just get little snippets and stuff.
Yeah. It's definitely different, right? You can definitely see that. Even though you couldn't follow some of it, you could tell I watched one of the new broadcasts. They're definitely in a basement.
Oh, wow.
Like they're definitely doing that. Like it's not the normal studio setup, you know, they're really going all out to still bring this coverage to people in any way that they can. And so it's very interesting to look at that. So yeah, small side note, a bit of levity. Many Ukrainian websites look like Yahoo circa 2000. They give off that vibe. We got to get these people some help, guys. Web design is a thing. Anyway, so yeah, it was just really nice to see that and be able to like go, oh, okay, because this is what I was kind of looking for. And like I said, I'll probably mention later like things I struggled with earlier in the week.
Okay.
Finding it yesterday, it was like, this is great. Late for this,
right?
But I could have timed this better. But there you go.
I like that very much.
That was good. Okay. So if you got a second for my brief history of Ukrainian language, here we go.
I'm interested to see because Yes. Go ahead.
This is the brief rundown. I got this information from several like language channels and reading things. So if I miss something, listeners, please let me know. So like most of it comes from, it's a branch of, it's in the Slavic language family, as we know. It kind of comes from this like Proto-Slavonic, very old language system that was old. It's been around for like 1,000 years or so. But the Greek, the Ukrainian language was originally sort of codified and written down by Greek church people. So the Slavic, I did not know this, the Slavic kind of Cyrillic alphabet comes directly from the Greek alphabet, right? They were using the Greek characters to write it down.
Uh-huh.
That's why some of them look really familiar. And then some of them are like, what is that? Because it's kind of from Greek, right? They used the Greek alphabet to write down, these original Greek church people. So then after a while, there was a split in the language. The Russian language is based on the like High Slavonic, Church Slavonic language, which was like the official, very highly codified language system of the church and government administration. Whereas what is now modern day Ukrainian comes from the like more common people language of the time, right? Similar to how in English, right, you had the like high English and like the French version, and then like the normal people speak that became English, right? Kind of like that almost. So that you had this one, and the Russian said, what would become Russia said, this is going to be our language system. Whereas the Ukrainians were like, we're going to use this like everyday sort of language, and we're going to turn that into our official language, and we're going to write our documents in that language. So that was the big schism in that Slavic dialect there, and it became two completely separate languages, right? So they're not mutually intelligible. They're not the same thing. They have a lot of shared words, but they also have a lot of words that are like false cognates, right? Where they sound similar, but they mean absolutely nothing in common, right? Because Ukrainian was influenced a lot by its position and its close contact with places like Constantinople. And I mean, literally being the crossroads of Europe and Asia.
Yeah.
Right. So there's lots of influence from Turkic languages, but also influences from Polish and German. Right. And then also Greek, because they were there too. So you have a lot of different influences from the language over time that sort of morphed and found their way in there. So you can read those eventually. There's so many words that, even though they're spelled with a different alphabet, once you figure out the phonetics, you'll read the word and be like, that says photograph. All right. Well, that's
moving on.
Wow. I was not expecting that. Got it. So there's some recognition there once you get past how scary the alphabet looks. But that's the split, right? So they are two different languages. Now, the Russian government will tell you they are not. Historically, they have tried many times to say that Ukrainian is not a real language, and it's just like a dialect of Russian. But you can definitely tell that Ukrainian is its own language because the Russians have tried to ban it like 7 times, and you don't ban things that aren't real, right? So you don't.
It's kind of a, this is
a little bit of a giveaway, Peter the Great. Come on, boy.
And I'm reminded of what's the childhood book about the dragon who eats the pancakes and the mom? Oh, No Such Thing as a Dragon.
Oh yeah. Right?
We talked about this, and I just love the exact same thing of the it's if it's not there, there's no reason to pat it on the head. So, but it's like, but it is there. But everyone's telling you that it's not. So,
yeah. So it's been banned several times. There was actually a letter banned from the Ukrainian alphabet for a long time because that letter, the letter that represents the sound g, that sound does not, that letter, does not exist in the Russian alphabet. So to exude their control over the Ukrainians, they banned the letter g that makes the g sound.
Well done.
Yeah. So that they wouldn't like offend their eyes, I guess. I don't know why, but like because it didn't exist, there's a different letter in the Russian alphabet that makes that sound, but it's a different character altogether in Ukrainian. So,
wow,
they banned it. It's crazy.
Very. Well, there's. Yeah, I guess we can probably just go ahead and dive right into research that we've done this week or something interesting. So the task this week was to do something of Ukrainian culture, whether that was visual, reading, arts, otherwise, history of it. So I'm interested to see how your deep dive into history of language has impacted what you ended up doing, Brandon.
Yes. We'll do. I'll let someone else talk for a little bit. I've been hogging the show so far, but
Aaron, do you want to go?
Oh no, I was finishing typing. But go ahead, Paul.
Okay, this is going well. Well, Brandon, it's interesting that you talked about the foundations of the language because I was interested in some of the impactful artists from Ukraine, and
any type of artist, visual.
Yes,
Sonic?
well, we will get there. So this gentleman, Taras Shevchenko, is considered to be the father of Ukrainian literature and the modern Ukrainian language because of how he used it in his poems. Then interestingly, and this was to me, this was a very late development as part of giving.
I think I read about this guy. When was he doing his thing?
He was alive in the early to late 1800s. So
okay, yeah. So I came across his name somewhere, I think.
I'm sure. To me, it was very interesting. But he is very influential in part of the Ukrainian identity. And what is interesting about him is that he basically lived all of his life either as a serf or in forced marches across Russia, or on forced expeditions to paint and write about what he saw. But he wasn't really part of the expedition crew. He was there just to document. And originally, he was painting to go along with his poems. But his illustrations have now taken on their whole other meaning as far as their importance and their relevance. And I did actually want to touch on one of his poems. It's very long, but apparently it's extremely popular and well known to the Ukrainian people. And it starts off basically. This is a poem about developing freedom and seeing their more of an identity. He says, "When I die, then make my grave high on an ancient mound in my beloved Ukraine in steppeland without bound, whence one may see white-skirted wheatland." And then it says Dnipro, steep cliffed shore. Dnipro is a city along a well-known river. There whence one may hear the blustering river wildly roars, till from Ukraine to the blue sea it bears in a fierce endeavor the blood of foemen. Then I'll leave wheatland and hills forever. Leave all behind, soar up until before the throne of God I'll make my prayer, for till that hour I shall not know of God. Make my grave there and arise, sundering your chains. Bless your freedom with the blood of foemen's evil veins. Then in that great family, a family new and free, do not forget with good intent. Speak quietly of me. He wrote that in 1945. 1845. Whoa. And it's called Testament, and it is again, speaking of this, Ukraine gaining freedom and standing up for themselves and making something new on the other side, as they again, we're building this identity. And another one of his paintings, one of the most famous ones, was actually one that he illustrated for one of his poems, Katerina. And I'll have a link to this in the show notes, but I'll send it over to you guys so you can see this too. It is a poem about the dangers of the Moskalis, or the Moscows, the Russian, right? And of not going with them. And so it's the story of a young peasant woman who falls in love with a Russian soldier who, against the chagrin of everybody who's in her family, and then he up and leaves. But then it's kind of her recovery and coming out of that for the better, basically, as a tale against a cautious tale on that. But his paintings, what I love about this is when they talk about his paintings, art historians have a hard time knowing which ones are his, because he paints all sorts of different styles and all sorts of different things.
Nice.
Across, and that's because, I mean, he's poor. And so I'll send you the Katerina one's most famous one. That was done in 1842. And this other one that I'm sending you is 9 years earlier. And it's just like not in the same style at all.
Those are extra different, by the way.
Right. And he's totally doing, then he has like extensive pencil work. And he had some formal training in Russia, actually, in their universities. He was taken out of serfdom by a wealthy artist who auctioned off one of his paintings to pay for the freedom of Taras, so that he could come.
But okay.
right, and work with him. But Taras held some beliefs that were not appreciated by others, where he wanted a strong, independent Ukraine. Is this sounding familiar?
Yeah, I think so.
And he was imprisoned many times for this. I never really quite got beyond that. And so it was very interesting to see him painting moments of, and I guess there should also be a, what are we calling it? A Greek art warning, only a Ukrainian art warning.
Oh, yeah,
some of these. But I'll include links to some of his most common work. Like I said, Katerina is one of them, and I spent my time reading these and looking at these pictures. And what I love about them is, again, just the vast difference of these. I will send you guys a third one so you can see of his paintings. This one was later. This one was after Katerina. It's called the Ascension Cathedral. It's a pencil sketch in 1845. And it's very lightly shaded, very subdued hues and colors. But he went on kind of this, and he also documented these journeys that he went on in the Aral Sea on a ship. He was forced to go on this Russian naval expedition across the Aral Sea, and he was just to document and paint and sketch. And he was out for 18 months and came back with all these drawings that he had with them. And then they sent him out on another one of these kind of excursions and adventures where he continued to paint and draw on these things. So he's also painting various landscapes across this wide diversity of places that aren't just aren't just Ukraine. But he's giving his perspective. And it's, like I said, I was very interested in kind of foundational stuff and where, kind of like you, Brandon, like where did this identity start coming from? And he's widely credited with the use of language, like very, very powerfully, where they talk about Ukraine as a country kind of awakening to itself about who they are as a people and what they identified with.
I came across his name in regards to that type of situation because, like I said, at that time, Ukrainian was considered like the Russians look at the split of the Slavic language as since theirs is from High Church Slavonic, they clearly view it as the better. Right. So they say, Ukrainian is no good. It's just of the peasants. I mean, it's not real totally, by the way. Yeah. They say that, right? But they weren't convinced that it was useful, right? They were like, oh, you can't write novels and poetry and do like great things with this language because it's not good, right? And he's one of the people that is kind of like, the Ukrainian people are like, hey, how about you look at this though? Blam. Like he's credited as being a person that kind of stood in the face of that sort of discrimination of the language and said, people were like, you can't write beautiful poetry in Ukrainian. And here he is writing beautiful poetry in Ukrainian, right? Like
exactly. Yes. Yeah. No. Again, bringing about this intellectual literary powerhouse, like you said, using this something that was demeaned and maligned and thought lesser, but was given power and by him. And he's still he's on some of their. I think there's a young portrait of him on some of their dollars, their monetary, their physical paper money, and things like that. But it was, and seeing his breadth of work and how young he started to do things. I mean, he's one of these stories of his early life was awful. Like, I mean, he's a serf in.
Yeah, it's not great. It's actually kind of the worst.
During the Russian Empire, right, where things were not good at all.
No.
And he was constantly being sold and bought and resold. Both his parents died very young and tragically, and he was kind of whisked off on one of these sales. And because of where he was then, was able to start doing these things, but he was also punished for his work from a very early age too, where one of the people he was working with during the what was it? My brain's gonna snap back into place in just a moment. During they had a war of 1812. Interestingly enough,
it's a different one, but yes, there's also it's the one Tchaikovsky wrote about.
Yeah,
right. That's the
during that he was caught painting in the basement and was like beaten for it. And yet he's still continued to do it. And basically what he was doing is he was living in these rich people's places with all these paintings around and was copying them to some extent. Right. And was looking around going, how do I do this? And he was given, like I said, opportunities to later study at other places in St. Petersburg as well. But kind of this early, you could tell he was trying to find and speak about something from a very early age and was finally able to do it later in life.
Interesting. That's pretty cool.
So, yes, Taras Shevchenko with Katerina, and just that's his most famous one, his poem and the painting that he did. It's an oil painting, and it's just. He captured, anyway, I'm not an art critic. Let's just be very real about this. But
you should be an art enthusiast.
Though. I am an art enthusiast. But in this painting, you see the young woman in classical Ukrainian, traditional Ukrainian garb, standing, looking extremely forlorn, and a man sitting down beside her, who we can assume is
traditional Ukrainian mustache going
with a traditional Ukrainian mustache and an amazing hat.
True.
Looking knowingly at her. Right. And then there is the Russian soldier blasting off with his horse. And I'm looking over his shoulder at her. And if you zoom in on this, the look on this soldier is basically, I don't know, it's compared to her expression, which is in the foreground. Obviously he's in the background, so it's not as sharp, but it's a flat face. Right, he's just looking, and then he's going to be gone. Right, there's nothing to him, and he's gone. And it's it's especially when it's tied to the poem, right, of knowing what's going on here. But it's just it's a very fascinating. The detail work about what the gentleman's doing on the ground, and her dress. I love it. I've stared at this thing for a very long time, getting prepared for this. So it was very good.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was my deep dive into Terrace this week.
Nice. Aaron, you have anything to talk about?
I kind of missed the mark because I guess I kind of just went down a rabbit hole with like history and like outside influences of Ukraine and kind of how it's never really been its own identity for like a really, really long time. So I was kind of a little all over the place, especially kind of like with outside influences, other cultures being brought in, and kind of how Ukraine, like Russia, kind of developed in its own like weird way, but it's always kind of had that historical ties connected to somebody else. And so that's why Ukraine is kind of diverse and unique. So I was a little all over the place, and I don't know if I have that much time. I had notes, but it was mostly just kind of about like history of kind of external conflict that always influenced Ukraine in some way, shape, or form, or like Kyiv and Bruce State with like the Golden Horde and, Soviet era kicking out non-Russians into Ukraine and then them taking those Ukrainians out and putting them in the factories, which caused the Holodomor, the Great Famine, and kind of thing. So kind of how Ukrainians' identity has always been shaped in some way, shape, or form by other people. And so that's kind of where I went. So I was all over the place.
That's all right. I started down that road as well. I got this book. Yeah. I only read the first section of it today, but it's called The Gates of Europe, A History of Ukraine. It's pretty great. Mm-hmm. So I was in a similar vein. I was interested in that kind of thing too. So I'm only in the first part. Like we just finished the Golden Horde bit. But I think that's interesting. That's an important part of it too, because Ukraine has had these moments in time where it was like the big shining star, and then through, like you said, many different outside influences, it was curtailed, perhaps slightly too early. Because before the Horde showed up, they were kind of moving in the same line as Constantinople, right? Kyiv was like it was emulating Constantinople in its area. It was the shining star of learning and literature and all that stuff in the east there, until it wasn't, until the guy died. Yaroslav, I think Yaroslav the Wise died. Yeah. And then kind of like after Charlemagne died, it was kind of all went south. You know what I mean? Because at that time, the Russians, some of the Russian people like to talk about how, Ukraine is part of Russia, right? If you go back further than that, you might find that the Kievan Rus Empire of 1000 AD, the seat of power in the whole area from the Black Sea to the Baltic was in Kyiv, right?
Yeah,
it was the controlling power area. Also, I did not realize that city was over 1,000 years old, and that blew my mind. Right when I read that, I was like, "Oh my gosh!" But this guy, the last great ruler of that thing, Yaroslav, he's such an important guy that the Ukrainians and Russians actually fight over if he was Russian or Ukrainian. Yeah. He's on the both, whatever the dollars are at each one. But in Ukraine, he's depicted with traditional Ukrainian mustache and costume. And in Russia, he's depicted with traditional Muscovite goatee and short hair. He's so fought over that nobody knows where his body is. It was taken out of the church he was buried in, and it's gone. Possibly removed when the Soviets invaded.
Wow.
But it could be in New York. Fun fact. But nobody knows. And nobody's saying.
Jeez.
So I think that's important, Aaron. That's an important part of the history of outside influences. So was there any one in particular that you thought was like super important to the development of this stuff?
So besides like Russia with like Muscovy,
Yes.
Poland, Lithuania also controlled like a vast swaths of it, but also like especially when you go like southern Ukraine, you get to like Cossacks, which were kind of like what's the word? Translates to kind of like freemen. How they're like semi-nomadic people, and they were kind of like pushed out from Tsarist Russia and kind of like started their own identity in southern like Ukraine, like close to Crimea. And another big factor that I learned, so it's kind of more of like ancient history, was that a lot of like Greek colonies started to kind of dot, further into like the Black Sea and things like that. And that's where we get a lot of these stories from like early nomadic tribes, from like the Scythians. And that's kind of where we get a lot of the stories of like the Amazon or Amazonian women, female, warriors, which like freaked the Greeks out because they weren't used to things like that. So that was kind of in that same area also, although it could be like a few hundred miles off. But I would kind of say like how the Cossacks, not Cossacks, Cossacks with an S, 2 S's, 3 S's actually.
Yeah.
Kind of that main staple of like, hey, if no one else is going to live here, we're forced out of our ancestral homes. We're going to make this our ancestral home. And that's kind of why when Russia took Crimea, one of the biggest ethnic groups that kind of had to overcome all this or did most of the fighting was traditional Cossacks in the area and Ukrainian Tatars that were kind of like the main staple of like early Ukrainian identity of like, oh, well, hey, although there's people here like in the Kyiv area, like they kind of, although they came from outside, they kind of adapted and made Ukraine like their identity. And so I think a lot of that really creation should be kind of towards the Cossacks in many ways, but especially that I've heard about or read about a lot of their like early history of how it ties into like, oh, Ukraine was getting attacked. Who was the people to defend it? Cossacks. Some outside influence was trying to come in and try to put in a new government. Who was always there? It's a Cossack. And so to me, that's kind of like the main group out of like the thousands that have played a huge important part in like their early history.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I read several similar things about how that the Cossack group of people, kind of that ethos and their spirit they embodied of like, yeah, no, we're just going to fight you. How about that? That sort of strong kind of identity, they kind of brought that into the Ukrainian fold, right? So Ukraine had an identity and they came in and said, we're adding this piece to that. And a lot of people really latched onto that idea and said, yes, that's good. They admired that strength and that kind of spirit. They were like that kind of free nomadic spirit. Cause traditionally, lots of nomadicism in that part of the world and everything. So that, I would have to agree that you definitely cannot underestimate the Cossack influence on Ukrainian history, especially kind of that like, a little bit later time, kind of like they played a big role in a lot of stuff like, like you said, fighting people and taking, if you were on their side, that's who you want on your side in like the 16th century was the Cossacks, right? Like that you need that was good.
Yeah, so I think that kind of how especially when you get to like the Crimean wars or anything in between, Cossacks just kind of play a huge staple, and plus especially after they settled down after like the kind of 1900s. But I have a history book by Paul Averitz. It's a Russian rebels 1600 to 1800, and a majority of the time where it talks about like uprisings against Russia, like Tsarist Russia or Muscovy Russia or Imperial Russia. It's usually somehow tied into Cossacks.
I was gonna say, is it just only Cossacks?
Pretty much, it's like there's sometimes where there's one cool story. I can't remember which one it is, but it talks about how there was a guy who was kind of seen like a Robin Hood kind of thing where he would build like mobile forts, like all out of wood, and they would like, oh, we need to run. And he would like tear down the fort and like ship it down river, and they would just like build up another fort, so they're like a constant like mobile fortress kind of thing. And the Russians were like, well, we're stumped. We don't know how to beat them. And so I think it was all the way up until like one of like Tsar Nicholas or somebody that's like, all right, enough, burn it down, kind of thing. So I thought that was story always funny. I have to find which one it was. It's kind of thick, and there's a lot of reading to it. I haven't read it since like college, but
there's lots of anecdotes about that with the Cossacks, right? Like switching sides mid thing, be like, hey, you didn't pay us, all right, now we're gonna beat you, like blam. Especially with that like Poland, Lithuania, the Muscovy kind of like conflict there. Like the Cossacks were generally a deciding factor on whose ever side they decide to be on. Whoever didn't make them the angriest, right? They would just fight the person that made them the maddest.
Yeah, so they kind of were like early mercenaries, but as the century changed, it was kind of more towards like, oh no, this is our home now. So
yes, they did sort of adopt Ukraine as their homeland. And again, that you're right, that does play a big part in the identity, I think.
Yeah.
So very nice.
I will add that also in my deep dive, I found 2 Ukrainian restaurants in my town that are on my list of places to go eat now.
Okay, so we're going to need future updates on how that goes.
Yes. One is a
super jealous right
brick and mortar establishment, and then the other one is a food truck. So
sick.
I'm very excited for this.
Yeah, I would be too.
Okay.
Let us know how that goes if you make it there.
I will. I had known about them, but also it's one of those things of it's on a side of town where I don't like ever go. Yeah. Not for any particular. It's like way on the south side of town. I live in a small town, but like we kind of stay up kind of north side and just go east and west. We like going south means we're going to Dad's or something. So I was like, oh yeah, I have driven by that place. We need to go because you know what I need? I need a kebab meal. That's what I need.
There you go.
I need that
borscht.
very bad.
Some borscht. That's what you need.
Yes,
actually.
Exactly. Anyway,
there you go.
That is on
very nice
my to-do list soon.
Sweet. Pretty awesome.
Hey. Well,
did you find any Ukrainian movies and or music to also?
Unfortunately, in my deep dive, not my deep dive. So I did find. Okay. So I do have notes here. Hold on. I need to find where I wrote this down. Most of the stuff, unfortunately, now the algorithm right now is very broken when you're trying to find stuff not related to the Ukrainian to the Ukrainian war.
That is true.
So
this is back to what I was talking about at the beginning, right? It's difficult to find this stuff.
It's not just basically if you search for this kind of thing right now, you're going to get documentaries. So there's a free one on Netflix from 2015 that you can see now. But one that I was interested in trying to find how to watch, it's a kind of a Disney Pixar style film called The Stolen Princess. It's a 3D animated fantasy film. And I tried to find this, but it is not possible, unfortunately.
I think you can watch it in English, but I don't think I saw it in English somewhere.
Yeah.
But I was trying to watch it in Ukrainian, and I
me too. That's what I wanted. I want Ukrainian, and I want subtitles. Don't.
Yeah.
None of this dub stuff. Like I'm not a dub person. Also, apparently, there's another animated film called The Tram Was Going, number 9.
Okay.
About how a tram, I think, has some level of cognition, and it follows along with people's lives as they ride the tram and how it changes.
Interesting.
And I really wanted to watch this one.
That does sound pretty sweet, actually.
Yes. And there were only a couple other ones after that, but those two really kind of bubbled to the top. But
yeah, I had a hard time as well. Like, I could find lists of like their names, but they're not available to watch anywhere that I could discover. Right? Like, none. Well, I mean, one. I found one I watched, but like, not a lot. Right? It's not a big thing currently. So maybe that's just because I didn't know what to search for. It's possible, right? I don't know the names of these movies. I don't have anything I'm like specifically looking for. So that could be part of it. But yeah, it's really difficult to find Ukrainian language anything. At least it was for me, movie wise.
Which I was kind of, I was saddened by, because I was wanting to. I like seeing, because there's the how to say this, so my exposure to like anime through Miyazaki is there's his take on fantasy.
Yeah.
There's also like a lot of cultural, whenever he sets them closer to home and not some like weird like European non-existent city, but this is in Japan. Right? Those are very different movies.
Stop throwing shade at Porco Rosso, okay? I like that movie. Quit it.
No shade. All these are very good. It's just whenever
I'm joking.
When he writes a story about like Japanese life, I love that very much. Like, but then there's the high fantasy, like Howl's Moving Castle. It's a very different movie than like Kiki's Delivery Service, which Lillian, by the way, absolutely loves.
Yeah,
and she watched that with subtitles on. So don't tell me you people out there can't do it. She's 6. But I was looking for something like that from that I could access about or from Ukrainian producers. And like you said, I couldn't quite ever crack that nut to get into that.
It's difficult. Well, I got one for you.
Okay.
All right. Well, I watched 2 movies because number one, I'd seen this one movie before and I really like it. And it's set in Ukraine. It's not necessarily a Ukrainian movie. It's a Hollywood movie about Ukraine. Before I start this, I would like to also say that Ukrainian movies also, the ones that I could find lists of, they all seem to deal with what Aaron was talking about outside influence and invasion and war. All of them. It's in there. It permeates these movies like a lot. And so, at least the ones that I could find lists of. Now, that it might not be every single movie ever, but a lot of the bigger releases that people have at least seen, it's in there. Right? It's definitely in there. So the first one I watched was but we're going to give it a slight pass. We're going to call it half Ukrainian. It is, of course, Everything is Illuminated from 2005, starring Elijah Wood. So post Frodo, Elijah Wood.
What?
Is in this movie.
He made it?
Yeah, this movie is kind of crazy, right? It's he's in it. And also Eugene Hutz, who is the lead singer of a band Gogol Bordello.
Yes.
He's in this movie. So we're gonna half count them as Ukrainian band because Eugene is Ukrainian. Maybe not the rest of the band. Awesome, you mean? So small spoilers. So if you want a half Ukrainian band, Gogol Bordello, I can't recommend. Anyway, so it's about this guy. Elijah Wood's character is a Jewish American who is going to Ukraine to search for his family roots. Right, like his grandfather was Jewish Ukrainian who escaped Ukraine when the Nazis came. Right.
Okay.
That's what they're looking for. He's going back there to try to find his history. Eugene plays this guy Alex, who's from Odessa, who's like, he's just interested in like ladies and dancing and doing weird things. But he goes with his granddad who's also called Alex, by the way.
Nice.
He gets hired by Elijah Wood's character, Jonathan, to drive him out to this village where his grandpa was from, right? And it's a really weird movie. It's very odd. The music's awesome. The undertones are all about looking for identity and your own history and kind of like the history of place and like where you belong in the world. That's kind of what the movie's about.
Yeah.
It's a little dark at the end, kind of takes a turn. So, warning for that. But it's really good. I really like the movie. It's really weird, and I just enjoy Eugene so much. This movie, he's so great. Like everything he says, like the way that he talks in that movie, it's beautiful. I say it all the time. And kind of like they're very different people, but they kind of grow to be friends, right? They have the classic trope of like the dog is really crazy and Elijah Wood is scared of dogs, but at the end of the movie, the dog's like laying on his lap, right? They have that sort of trope in there. Everybody loves that trope, right? It's my favorite one. But it's about looking for identity and a place and how you connect to other things and, discovering parts of your identity that you didn't know about and how that can change you as a person, right? So it's pretty cool. Some of the movies in Ukraine, some of it's shot in the Czech Republic. So, you don't get the full Ukrainian landscape, but it's not too bad.
Sure.
You get the idea, right? From pictures that you see of Ukraine, right? Very vast, open spaces, rolling hills and woodlands and farm. So like as a Midwest boy, it calls to my heart, right? Like it's just like,
as we've discussed, the allure of hills.
Yeah, you see the hills and the forests and the farmland, and it's just like achingly beautiful as a person from the Midwest, where that's like what you see in your life and that's what you really identify with. You see a place like that and you're like, oh my gosh, great. It's gorgeous, right? So you can watch Everything is Illuminated. It's a really bizarre movie, but I like it. It's a good one. The one I found that is actually Ukrainian is even more bizarre.
Okay.
And it's called Hetsulka Kasinia. I'll send you that. And it's about this so this family of Ukrainians that live in New York are the kid's dad dies and he says, I will give my child all my inheritance if he marries a Ukrainian girl. So the uncle and the family bring the guy to Ukraine to look for a wife. That's your setup, right?
Okay.
But importantly, Aaron, this is important. This movie takes place in 1939. Whoops. And it's basically a Greek tragedy, right? It's wild.
Really?
Yeah. So like the way that it's set up and the way that it plays out, and like they go to this hotel. The hotel and the uncle are like old buddies from the village a long time ago. They set up this thing. They try to do, find them a wife and whatever. But like in the hotel, there's this band that's playing and they act as like the Greek chorus. So like all of their songs are like informing you about what's happening in the movie or some kind of like exposition, and they play like this really important role in the movie, even though they're just like the band over there in the thing. It's crazy. And the colors and the filtering on this thing is like really vibrant and nuts. And like it all takes place in the Carpathian Mountains. So again, it's actually shot in the Carpathian Mountains. So it's gorgeous in like far Western Ukraine, like the Polish border where we are here. It's wild. Right. So there is like the whole thing where there's some silliness where like the one girl that he really likes, right? He actually likes her. And like, it's, trying to figure out like, oh, does she like him? Or the other women in the village figure out that he's there and is going to get a lot of money if he marries one of them. And so everybody comes and there's like shenanigans where like, Hallmark movie moment where like he's like the girl falls on him in the woods, like by the river where he's waiting for the first girl. And like as girl number 2 falls on him and is holding him, girl number 1 comes around the corner and looks at him. Right? Like that's in there. But this whole thing is like undercut by the fact that it's 1939 and they don't know it, but the Soviets are coming. Right? So there's no way, no matter what, there's no way the movie's actually ending good. Right?
Right.
Like, because this movie, like the last credit, like the title, like the movie ends and then it flashes up on the screen. The Soviets arrived like 3 months later. Right. So you're left to wonder, like, did they make the right decision doing this? Are they okay? Were they able to get out? Like, what does that mean? Like, so it's kind of got that Greek tragedy element where they got what they wanted, but like, did they though? Right. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's absolutely amazing. I love this movie very much. And the music in this movie is brilliant. Right. Because there's 2 actual bands in this movie. And I didn't realize they were actual bands until later when I was looking for Ukrainian bands.
Yeah.
I saw these people and it's like, wait, I saw them in the thing. Oh my gosh, what's going on?
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. Right. So the quick segue on these bands real fast. Like one of them is called the Duck Daughters. And they're like this really weird, like they're both really strange bands. They're kind of like folk experimental strangeness. And it's a female band, like 6 people in it or whatever. And their music is very eclectic and interesting.
Sounds perfect.
It's great. And the other one that I might actually be in love with is they're called Daka Braka. And it's these 4 people. And they play like, it's similar. It's like folk music, but like not folk music, but like modern interpretations on actual folk songs and like weird things. And it's just, they wear Cossack hats. It's great.
Which is perfect.
It is perfect. So it's like on their website, it describes them as like combining nothing you've ever heard with everything you've ever heard before.
Oh
right? Like it's kind of like folk music / world music kind of inspired stuff. Right. It's lots of drum and like harmony singing, but also there's a cello and the one girl plays piano sometimes and there's an accordion. It's like, it's crazy, but I love it like a lot. So
perfect.
They actually make a cameo in the movie. They have this party and they're playing at the party.
Oh.
And I didn't know it because I watched the movie and it's like, oh, dude, this song is awesome. This song is great. And then I saw them in a different video later and I was like, wait a minute. That's the people that I just saw in the movie. What in the world?
It's all coming together.
The hats gave them away. Okay, they always perform in these giant black Cossack hats, which is gorgeous.
Yeah,
but like,
not something they thought out exactly very well.
No, it's beautiful. I think they did it on purpose, right?
Well, I mean, if they were trying to disguise themselves.
I don't think they were disguising themselves.
Well,
but the song they play in the movie, it's called the Carpathian Rap, and it's like it's based off of these like ancient traditional folk songs that grandmothers in the village would sing about young girls trying to find a husband in the small villages and like all the boys being kind of worthless. And like, so they like date one boy and they're like, no, he sucks. And then like date another one, like, yeah, no, he's not good either. And like, fair. So it's like a big list of what was wrong with all the men that they tried to date to try to find a husband. So when you know that context, it's even funnier. But it's really cool.
Yeah.
And it really fits the vibe of the movie at that point too, right? Like, so
that's awesome.
Yeah. That was fun. It was an accidental crossover event of movie and music that I was not expecting. When I first tried to Google music, I just Googled like Ukrainian music.
Yeah.
Did you do that?
Yes. That was
bad.
No.
Did you find all the terrible Ukrainian Europop?
That's like all there was for
it's bad. It's bad. Very bad. It's real bad.
Yes.
Aaron, did you listen to Ukrainian Europop at all, by the way?
Did you?
Well, every time, not Europop, but every time I would put in kind of like Ukrainian like music, and it always pulled up like kind of like the Eastern like Polyaka like guitar stuff, and I was like, yeah, those are the ones I gave up.
Yeah, some of the folk songs like that, they're cool. They all are the same, but they're cool. But the pop is bad. It's real. It's like slow to medium tempo dance pop.
Yeah,
all of it. It's not good. I didn't like it at all. None of it. So I will have to try a little bit harder to maybe find some music that's good. But I did like Daka Braka and the Duck Daughters, so that was exciting. Accidental discovery there.
There you go.
So there you go. Also, if you are a metal enthusiast, which I know Collin is, I can recommend you, obviously, probably the most famous band currently out of Ukraine, Ginger. Right. Definitely a metal band.
Okay.
They're really awesome. And if you like a little bit more symphonic metal, there's another band called Ignia, who are also good.
Oh, okay.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yes.
But Ginger, good stuff. Right. Ginger's great if you like kind of if you like growly lyrics, because their singer is this girl named Tatiana. She's like this tiny girl who like sings like a monster. It's very exciting. So Ginger is good. You like that one. But yeah, the Euro pop stuff. No mount. Okay. Or if you like traditional folk instruments, you of course have to listen to Bandura music. The official folk instrument of Ukraine, the bandura. Have you seen this thing?
No.
All right. Imagine a giant circle that's like 2 feet across, and it has like a guitar neck on one side, but it's basically a harp, and it has like 50 strings on it.
This thing is huge.
It's enormous.
Just found a picture of this.
Yeah, it didn't get this enormous apparently until like the 1940s. So it was smaller before, but it's huge. It sounds not unlike a harpsichord. So like
I can envision that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool for a little bit. Too much bandura is just too much bandura, right? There's some really good compositions on it. There's some good videos of like dudes on the street singing and playing bandura, right? That's a genre on YouTube, I think. Probably unofficially, but so that's cool. Some other folk music stuff, but I don't know how you play that many strings at once. It's just like a mobile harp, kind of like.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was about all I got to the music. I sort of ran out of time with music. Got distracted with languages and things, but yeah.
Well, I had intended to also kind of do a better dive into some documentaries about the background here. And I will say that everything that I came across specifically focused on the continued conflict in the Donbass region. And so I'll add a list to the Google Doc here of a list of stuff that kind of breaks down into there's like 20 or something documentaries that you can watch about kind of the history of these different regions and some of the conflicts that they've had.
Did you watch any of them?
The one that I started watching it's called Donbass.
Okay.
And I
was gonna say, if we need to do a little bit of a part 2 later,
we may need to.
We can hit some of that stuff.
Yeah. But it's specifically, that one is specifically about the conflict in the Donbass, in Donbass, and kind of they break into a little bit of the propaganda and that goes on in that region, and the looking at checkpoints and just kind of what life is like in that particular region. And obviously we know that, and this came out in 2018, so it was not good then. And then obviously we know now that region has been pushed through entirely, and was one of the first ones, right, that they struck and moved into to try and claim and take over as their own.
Yeah. So that does sound interesting. I might have to watch some of that and stuff. So we might have to do part 1.5 here a little bit, but if not next week, the week after, maybe.
and that's something that I see. You talk about what's interesting about the history of Ukraine and a lot of the writings and a lot of the development of a society and culture is reflecting on the influence of outside influence and input and direction. A lot of the media put out by Ukraine is about that same thing. A lot of these documentaries are about that same thing, about fighting propaganda within the country and still struggling for that identity and living on these edges, of these in these war zones, right in the Donbass, in the other regions by that, of like even prior to all of this, there was a lot. It was very intense, and one of the things that there's a couple ones on this list about something I actually wasn't aware of. Was Euromaiden. Had you heard of this?
I'm going to need a little bit more context than that.
So Euromaiden was back in 2013, 2014. It was massive protests.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. I got you now.
Yes. Sorry. Euromaiden, where it was part of an uprising, and civil unrest in Ukraine.
Yes.
And, so there's a documentary about that too, as they're trying to, again, start those protests. Anyway,
that had to do with some of the. I think was that the one where the president was like, "Yeah, we're totally gonna sign this treaty with NATO and do this stuff," and then like the very last second, he's like, "Just kidding, not really." Like we're gonna sign this treaty with Moscow instead, and the people were like, "What?"
Yes, yep, exactly. That's what he did. He was going to have a closer association with the EU. It wasn't NATO. It was just he was going.
Oh, just the EU. I couldn't remember, but yeah.
Well, because the whole signing on to NATO thing is something completely different. And
that's fair,
right? Like that. Anyway, so yeah. So
that's what led to the Crimea thing. But
yes, exactly. And so during this, is he drew ties closer to Russia, and people were less than happy to say that.
Gee, I wonder why.
But anyway, so yeah, I think we could definitely do. I would like to work through a couple of these documentaries.
All right.
There's some of our documentaries. Some of them are, docudramas or whatever, or more stylized, but they're playing on themes.
Same themes, yeah.
Like one of the ones that I had actually heard of before was one called Atlantis, where this came out in 2019, and it's a film that's set in 2025 after Ukraine's victory with Russia over the war with Russia. Little did they know, right?
Oh, dear.
It's a scout that is now going to look for the bodies of soldiers that were lost, and the story of him uncovering their tales and things that happened there. So anyway, that's obviously fictional, but
but still, yeah. Okay, yeah, we can do part 2. You want to do part 2 next week or the week after that? Give you a break or give you some time to work through?
Yeah, I think we'll do it in 2 weeks.
All right, sounds good. Part 2 in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Sound good, Aaron?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. All righty.
Because that will give me time to figure out what I'm doing.
All right.
And hopefully be better vocally. Vocally. I know this is fun for everybody to listen to this.
Yeah, it's all good.
Sorry, I had to mute myself as I cough. Let me get some more drink, and then. So I really enjoyed this.
I did too.
It's one of those things of I don't know if you get this, like while I'm learning about this and looking into these people, it's always one of those of like I get frustrated with myself of like I didn't know this stuff earlier. I didn't watch these things earlier, and I know you can't watch and learn and consume everything. It just is like it's one of those things of like the world is so big. There's so many stories.
Yeah.
There's so much history that I really, really do think that it's never too late to do a deep dive, and that especially in times like this where it's super confusing, right? Like it's like for somebody over here across the way, it's like I have no context for what's going on or why this is happening. Like I don't like it, but I can't exactly put a history to this, and I think that's a disservice. So taking this time to do some opportunity to not just learn about what's happening on, but also develop a better appreciation for the peoples of Ukraine and that the history that they do have. And I think that is always a good thing and should be pursued, whether in times of war or hopefully in times of peace.
That's true. I agree. I'm the same way. I've been fascinated with Ukraine for a long time, but I've only ever like had the time to sort of pick up pieces here and there, and little bits and little things here and there. So it hasn't been this concerted effort. So it's really been good this week to sort of focus on that and just like you said, kind of take it in more and sort of you're right, gain a deeper understanding and appreciation for the people that live there and what they're dealing with right now, and having the context of why they are being forced to deal with this is useful just for the current climate of everything. So
yeah,
I think I enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Aaron?
Sorry, my headphones got disconnected. What?
It's all good. Sorry. Just your thoughts on kind of learning about some Ukrainian things this week.
Well, so my biggest thing with Ukraine is that, especially like with the history, since like it itself has like a deep history, kind of what I said before, like it's always tied to something. And so my biggest thing is wanting to like separate like just the Ukrainian part. But even that in itself is difficult because like it's always like, oh, but like this, cultural thing comes from this. But like I know there's deeper roots with Ukraine, and this week's kind of going to be a little chaotic. I got some time in between baseball games to listen to something.
Right, yeah.
I'm just trying to find more of like what is like true Ukrainian, and try to tie that into it as well.
No, I think that's important too, and kind of what Collin was talking about a little while ago with there is this element of like it is such a crossroads, and so many things intersect there. So you have that to deal with, plus this layer of propaganda that's been laid on top of it by different entities, right? To be like, no, that's not true. It was this, right?
Yeah.
Sort of sifting through that mire is also difficult, right? Because it's not a new thing. Like you said, Aaron, that's been going on for a couple hundred years, at least. So like trying to dig through that is hard. So I think, we'll keep doing that. We'll keep going. Because I was interested in that too. I just was a little late to that because I was trying to watch a movie.
Yeah. So, yep, I'm all for that. We will do more next time.
All right.
I look forward to that.
All right. So Ukraine Part 2 in 2 weeks. Sounds good.
Okay.
If we do have any Ukrainian listeners, know that we love you. We hope you're doing all right. And
absolutely
hope to hear from you soon, right? So
no, we all the best, and we absolutely are in awe of everything going on, and are loving learning about you and trying to support you in ways that we can.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. My throat is about to die, And so we're
Oh my.
That's my cue. That's my cue.
Yep.
Okay. Cut. Anyway.
All right.
Love you guys.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.